last video, I was worried about the universal joint on the steering shaft going to be in the way of the mount point and all that, but the universal joint for the rack is about right here. So there's literally, it's almost straight up and down. So what I'm most likely gonna have to do is take this guy back or use a different steering rack. I'll have to see. When I sit in it, see where the steering wheel's at. I might be able to make a mount and pull that whole rack. I might have to take the whole steering shaft and move it in towards the seat a little bit. No big deal. Another thing, a few times I'd taken pictures of this before. The front end always looked high and I couldn't figure it out. I knew I was going to have to cut into the fenders to get this thing to work. But as you can see, there's a 2x4 under that wheel, because what I did is I set my laser up, I shot a line and measured up to the center of the rear wheel, and then come down here and measured the front wheel. The front wheel is 1.5 inches lower, so this concrete foundation slopes pretty bad in my shop. So that helps, because I thought the front subframe was a little high, but ultimately the reason it was so high is because the ground is sloping down, so the measurements I have the frame set at, basically where that block is right there, that's really the only spot it's pretty decent. So you come down here and obviously the ground's going to slope down. You go back, it's probably going to slope up a hair. So the rear is not that big a deal, because I can space that subframe down, and it's pretty high up in the back right now, so spacing it down is not a big deal. So now it's on to probably going to clearance these fenders, because this is where the truck's riding. This is ride height right here. So you'll have to get into those fenders pretty bad. And then I also will imagine these are going to stick out a lot more than this. And obviously that's cambered way in, because it's just literally resting against the inside of the fender. I did that so I could get a reference point for the wheel center line. That way, when I set up the control arms, put the spindle on it, I can measure the spindle out so it's perpendicular to the chassis, and then shoot my laser and make sure the cab is where it needs to be. Pretty sure it's not going to be that easy to get in once the door bars are in and everything else. But this seat's got to move over just a hair too. I found out this steering column wasn't straight. It was tweaked a little bit, so I straightened it out. Now I just got to slide the seat over here. But yeah, actually I'll probably be able to take this column and maybe bring it like another inch and a half towards me. So make some mounts up here that slide forward, or probably just remake this mount all together, because this thing ties into the A-pillar, or just under the A-pillar here, and that's right where the A-pillar bar is going to go, right down through the middle of that. So yeah, probably just refab this to move it forward, and that's it. Getting ready to set up the front subframe for a final inspection. It's not final inspection. Final fitment? Whatever. You might remember this piece of channel. That was one of the first videos I shot where I was making my frame rails. That was the one I set up to make sure that both frame rails had the exact same bend in them. I had two pieces of angle, one welded here, and that set the angle. Well, what I did is I trimmed that off, and I went ahead and welded 3 couplings on and used 3 carriage bolts because of the feet they have on the bottom. They're rounded. And what this is going to do is allow me to level it left and right and front to back. And I can clamp the subframe to this so it won't move, because with the other pieces I was using, they were they're back over there. Two smaller pieces of channel. When they sit on the ground, when you have 4 points of contact, they can be off. They teeter back and forth, they don't fit, you gotta shim it in. When you have 3 points of contact, it'll sit level, it'll sit level. It will sit sturdy on the ground wherever you put it. So that's the reason I put 3 legs on this. So the subframe will get set on here, clamp down, I can level it front to back, level it left to right, then probably move it around and double check it one more time, and then probably tack weld a few pieces to the frame to get it set good, and then start making the bracketry to hold it. All right, well, looks like I'm gonna have to get this guy mounted first and then come back and mount the rear section, because what happened is I set my laser up, and if you can see, it's right on the bottom of the mounting hole. And with this cross member, the 2 mounting holes here for the front pickup point, the rear pickup point is 5 millimeters higher. And if you can see, there's a real faint silver mark like right up there, and it's about 10 millimeters high, and it's basically free floating right now. It's just hanging on its own. So when you try to bend it down, it's bending everything down. So instead of bringing it down level, it's bending the thing back. So what I'm going to do is focus on getting this one mounted. Whatever mounts I have to come off the frame and make for this to get it solid and set where it needs to be, that's the first thing. Then once this is set, I can work on this one in the back, which what I'll do is I'll probably put the control arms in it, get that to be spaced between these two where it needs to be, because these metal tabs here that go between the two, they have slots on both ends, so they're highly adjustable. This subframe can move, this rear subframe piece can move around a lot, forward, backward, left, right. So what I'll probably end up doing is putting the control arms on to catch the distance from center here to center here, and then get this mounted exactly 5 millimeters higher than this one, and then get this mounted solid, then just work on these brackets going in between them, because the brackets going in between them I don't believe they're not really structural brackets at all. They're just kind of there to hold the two pieces in place. So, or maybe I'll just fab totally new brackets once both these things are set where they need to be. So I guess I will just move on to mounting the front now. Well, it's getting closer. Obviously the 2x4 is not going to stay, but that basically just set the angle for the down piece of frame rail that's going to run into the front bar there on the front of the chassis. I sat in the truck, pretended like there was a pedal box in there, and everything should be good with that right there. So the only issue I'm going to have is I'm just going to put these in, fab both of these up, put them in, tack everything in place, and then I'm going to just attempt to fit that. If I have to, because what happened is, since this is so close to that rail back there, I might have to notch this out for that down. The frame rail portion is going to come down right here, because it sits real close in this area back here. But if I got to notch that out, that's fine. What I might end up actually doing is welding that to the actual chassis, because that really has no reason to come out once this engine and everything's in the truck. I don't think. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll change my mind. Get it in there and see how much of it's got to be cut out. Maybe I can make brackets or something to hold it and do it from there. But oy, hopefully soon this damn subframe will be floating. Alright, so I brought the super awesome 2x4 frame rail jig over to the table. I measured it up. It's just a hair under 134 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make that, because 34 degrees. 180 minus 134 is 46. 40, yeah, 46 or something. I'm just going to make it 45. It's easier to just cut and mark out and everything else, making it a 45. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with my frame rails, where I'm just going to pie cut it and bend it so it'll be cut on 3 sides, bent on 1, and then welded on 3 sides. So that'll be basically taking a 22.5 degree pie cut out of the frame rail, bending it, bending 2 of them, tacking them, and then just making sure both of them are exactly the same. And then the subframe might be mounted close to it. So I got the 2 rails set up. I've already laid one out, so I know what the measurements need to be on this one, because on the initial piece I measured from the top of the frame rail to where the bend was, so I know what that dimension has to be. Then I just went from the end to here, so that way I can just transfer that to here, draw 45 on the end, and do my angles. So first thing, and these are both set up like back and back, like not symmetrical like this, but when they get welded in place, the weld seam will be on the inside of both frame rails. I usually put the weld seam down so you can't see it. But earlier when I set this weld seam on the subframe, you could feel it almost like where you set something down and it's not level, and you can feel it rocking back and forth, just because if you feel this weld seam, it has, I don't know, a few thousandths difference. So I just decided to put them both to the inside. They won't touch anything, and yeah, that'll work. So first thing is, I know I'm going to need 45 cut on the end of that. And then I know, since I already did that one, that I come down 10 and 15/16 on this one. And the 10 and 15/16 is the top of the bend. So we'll put that up like that. Just using this speed square makes it a lot speedier. 22.5 that way. $22.5 that way. Cut that piece of pie out, bend it, check it, make sure it's 45. It's usually within the ballpark, a couple tenths of a degree. And then tack it up, match both of them. And then make the 45 cuts on the end, because that's where it ties into the frame. And yeah, we will be super close to having the subframe good. Well, kind of good. Not 100%, but you know. They're not welded yet, but I gotta double check all the measurements, the frame's level, everything else is good before I do that, and I have to lay the bolt holes out on them. But the horns are in, and obviously there's gonna be bars coming off to support them from the sides, the top, and everything else. I'm not just gonna have two 2-inch frame horns sticking off the front. So on to the next thing, which was going to be straightening out all my fuel line, but the bender never showed up. It was supposed to be here Friday, so maybe that will be the next video.